On December 8, 2025, Lockheed Martin signed an agreement that was reported in the defense press as an inconspicuous industry deal, but it may actually be the most important document in the American defense industry of the last 10 years. The second largest defense company in the world, with a market capitalization of $123 billion and 21,000 engineers, allowed a 5-year-old startup to install its own production cell directly in a Lockheed missile factory. Not as an external supplier, but inside the factory hall with its own hardware, its own software, and its own employees. The startup is called Hadrian Automation, founded in November 2020 by a then 29-year-old Australian named Chris Power. In 2024, Hadrian made just $3 million in revenue, according to estimates by Breaking Defense. Lockheed makes more revenue in 30 minutes than Hadrian does in an entire year. And yet, Lockheed is bringing this startup into its own factory to manufacture components for the PAC-3 MSE surface-to-air missile, the THAAD Defense Interceptor missile, the Precision Strike missile, and the GMLRS artillery shell. Because Lockheed can't do it fast enough themselves anymore. In the press release, it was called a partnership. The honest interpretation is that the largest defense contractor in the Western world has admitted that it can no longer produce its own ammunition fast enough. And that the answer to this is not their own machinery, but a startup that didn't even exist 6 years ago. And that's the real issue. Hadrian is not the next Andrew selling weapons. Hadrian is the layer referee. They build the factories where Andrew, Lockheed, or the US Navy have their components manufactured. Hadrian wants to reinvent the entire precision mechanical supply industry of the USA. If that succeeds, Hadrian will not only make the 10,000 small machine shops that currently make up Lockheed's supply network obsolete, but in the long run, Lockheed itself. Because a corporation whose most important components are produced by an external contractor in its own facility will eventually have to answer what it really is anymore. My name is Servan, and this is Mars Chronicles. Sorry. Before we dive in, a quick word about the sponsor of this episode, and it actually fits the theme surprisingly well. The whole Hadrian story is about radically compressing a process that historically took forever. So in the end, there's time for what matters most. That's exactly what Prep My Meal does, just with cooking time. A German company that delivers freshly cooked, healthy meals frozen to your home on the day you choose. They last 6 months in the freezer, several days in the fridge, and can be heated up in under 10 minutes. 100% natural, with no artificial additives, no added sugar, low in calories, high in protein, cooked by real chefs in Germany. I'll be honest, on a day with 10 hours of research and a live stream in the evening, cooking is the first thing I skip. That's exactly what this is made for. I'm a huge chicken fan. That's why my absolute favorite is the chicken fajita bowl, with rice, beans, corn, and other delicious ingredients. There are over 60 dishes to choose from, for every diet, whether gluten-free, vegan, low-carb, muscle building, or weight loss. And new ones are added every month. With the XL dishes, you can get started from just €5.99 per portion. Plus, a 30-day money-back guarantee, 4 out of 5 stars in the reviews, and over 300,000 satisfied customers. With my code MARS, you save an extra 5 on your entire order. The discount also covers the subscription. Find the code and link in the description and pinned comment. Check it out, especially if you're short on time to cook. To prep my meal. And now back to the man without whom Hadrian wouldn't exist. Without Chris Power, there would be no Hadrian. Power is Australian. Born in 1991, he is not an engineer. His first company was an e-commerce store. In his early 20s, he developed an almost obsessive belief that the next major geopolitical conflict would not be decided militarily, but industrially. Whoever controls the factories in 20 years will control the world. He looked at America and saw a country whose precision manufacturing had been eroding for 30 years. The small machine shops, the backbone of the US defense industry, are now mostly family businesses with owners in their 60s. Without successors, with machines that are 3 decades old. Their efficiency, measured by what's called equipment uptime, that is, the percentage of time a machine is actually producing instead of being programmed, set up, or maintained, averages around 30%. A modern car factory operates at 80 to 90%. So, the US precision industry is structurally 3 times less efficient than the automotive industry. And this in a situation where, according to the Pentagon's 2024 strategy paper, the US military would have used up its ammunition within 8 days in a hypothetical conflict with China without being able to replenish it quickly enough. Power moved to the US in 2019 with, according to his own statement, $6,000, spent half a year visiting machine shops and found that the situation was even worse than he had assumed from the outside. In November 2020, he founded Hadrian, named after the Roman emperor who had the protective wall built against the unruly north. The symbolism is clear. Power sees his company as a protective wall against the industrial decline of the West. In most European capitals, that is considered ideological. In Washington, in the Trump-Vance Pentagon, that has majority support. What Hadrian does technically can only be understood with a brief look at precision manufacturing. A traditional rocket engine consists of thousands of metal parts that have to be manufactured to within a few micrometers of precision. So, to 1,000th of a millimeter. A human hair is 50 to 120 micrometers thick. If a combustion chamber wall's tolerance is incorrect, it will fail under load. This is manufactured on CNC milling machines, whose programming is a specialized field of its own. A complex component can require weeks of programming, plus hours of machining, plus hours of metrology. And in an average US workshop, people operate a machine that runs 30% of the time. What Hadrian has done is compress this entire process into an integrated software platform that they call Opus. When a customer submits a CAD file, Opus automatically analyzes it, generates the machining strategy, writes the machine code, schedules material and tools, and directly controls the robot-loaded CNC machines. People are involved. But they no longer load by hand, no longer program by hand, and no longer measure by hand. According to Hadrian, the result is figures that were considered unattainable in the industry. Equipment uptime of 75 to 80% instead of 30. An operator-to-machine ratio of 1 to 10 instead of 2 to 1. Delivery times 10 times shorter. Unit costs roughly halved. It's hardly possible to independently verify these numbers, but defense reporters consistently confirm them in conversations with customers. Whoever commissions Hadrian gets their parts faster and cheaper. In US defense procurement, this is not a gimmick, but a strategic necessity. The real scale can be seen in the factory footprint. Hadrian has 4 manufacturing plants. Factory 1 or Factory 1 in Hawthorne, the research facility was right next to SpaceX. Factory 2 in Torrance, completed since 2022 for SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Astra, Anduril, and unnamed customers. Factory 3 in Mesa, Arizona, opened in January 2026, cost $200 million, has 4 times the throughput of Factory 2, and employs around 350 people. Deliberately located in the drone cluster around the General Atomics Reaper manufacturing facility. Factory 4 is the most strategically important, opened on March 20, 2026 in Cherokee, Alabama. Built not for drones, but for the US Navy, for components of the Columbia and Virginia class nuclear submarines. It manufactures for the SubSafe program, the strictest quality regime in the world for submarine parts, introduced after the loss of the USS Thresher in 1963. The fact that the Navy is entrusting SubSafe critical parts to a 5-year-old company is an industrial policy signal of considerable significance. The interest, an industrial policy signal of considerable significance. The contract covers $900 million across 3 factories. Hadrian is investing a total of 2.4 billion more than the company has ever raised in capital. Over the next 12 months, 4 to 5 more plants are planned, including a munitions, a rocket system, and a drone division. If even half of that succeeds, Hadrian will be an industrial conglomerate with 7 or 8 sites in 5 states by the end of 2026. If you've stayed with us this far, you now know more about AI-powered precision manufacturing than 95% of all German-speaking business journalists. And next comes the part where Lockheed Martin signs its own death warrant. Hit hype if you have it, otherwise a like, subscription, or comment also helps the channel a lot. Thank you very much, let's continue. Lockheed Martin Missiles and Fire Control, or MFC for short, is the missile division of the company. With facilities in Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. Their products are the spearhead of Western deterrence. PAC-3 MSE is NATO's main missile defense system against medium-range missiles. THAAD protects, among others, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Guam against ballistic threats. PRSM is the ATAC-MS, the successor of the US Army and GMLRS, the ground-launched missile that has been massively used in Ukraine since 2022. All 4 are demand-driven. Since the war in Ukraine and the escalation in the Indo-Pacific, orders have far exceeded production capacity. In 2024, the US Army classified Lockheed's PAC-3 inventory as critically below requirements. Lockheed wants to increase production to around 650 units by 2027. The Pentagon wants more, the Allies want more, but Lockheed can't produce more. In late autumn 2025, Lockheed apparently realized internally that neither its own machinery nor its supplier network could deliver this increase in a reasonable time. The small workshops in the supply chain are already operating at full capacity, and setting up a new internal production line would have taken years. So, Lockheed did what would have been unthinkable 10 years ago and invited a 5-year-old startup to set up a production cell in its own facility. Tom Karuba, who is responsible for production at Lockheed MFC, called this a key enabler for increased output. Structurally, this means Hadrian becomes the actual producer, Lockheed the integrator, with its name on the product. One wonders what Lockheed still contributes in this model, other than the contract with the government, the name on the component, and the decades-long relationship with the Pentagon. If this pattern seems familiar to you, it's not by chance. It's 1980. The giant is IBM, the disruptor is Microsoft. Back then, Microsoft was 5 years old and had 30 employees. IBM needs an operating system for its first PC and licenses DOS from Microsoft. Hailed as a normal partnership. No one thinks IBM is in danger. 10 years later, it's not IBM that's the dominant player in the PC market, but Microsoft, because Microsoft was allowed to sell the operating system to all other manufacturers as well. To Compaq, Dell, and HP, for example. The PC became a Microsoft product that just happened to be sold by different hardware companies. In 2005, IBM sold its PC division to Lenovo. The same pattern repeats itself with disturbing regularity. In 2000, Yahoo licensed Google Search and created the search giant. Polaroid worked with Microsoft on digital imaging technologies and went bankrupt in 2001. The mechanism is always the same. A giant has a scaling problem that it can't solve internally. A disruptor offers the solution as a service. The giant accepts because it urgently needs to solve the problem. The disruptor generalizes its solution to other components. After a decade, it becomes the value creation center. The giant is left with the commoditized residual function. I'm not claiming that Hadrian will take down Lockheed in 10 years. That would be an exaggeration. Lockheed has deep Pentagon connections, a huge platform base, and secret experience that no startup can replicate that quickly. But the structural risk is real. If Hadrian's model moves into a second, third, fourth Lockheed model and their software becomes the definitive production platform for US defense components, then Lockheed will be where IBM was in 1995 in 20 years. Still profitable, still big, but no longer the one dictating the terms of the market. Anyone who thinks that's too pessimistic has a point. Hadrian is tiny. 3 million in revenue compared to Lockheed's 74 billion. But this is exactly where the investment boom happens. In July 2025, Hadrian closed a Series C round of $260 million led by Founders Fund and Lux Capital. In January 2026, another round followed under T. Rowe Price at a valuation of $1.5 billion, which is 533 times the annual revenue. The investors aren't thinking in revenue multiples, but in option values. They're buying the option for a stake in the next US industrial base. If Hadrian becomes the standard platform for AI-powered precision manufacturing, the addressable market isn't 3 million, but the entire US defense, aerospace, and naval manufacturing market. According to estimates, that's $70 billion. This bet is no coincidence. The list of investors is a who's who of the American tech elite. Founders Fund is Peter Thiel's fund. Anduril and Palantir are funded. By the way, I'll be making my own videos about these two soon. Both are fascinating and frightening. Andreessen Horowitz promotes investments in national security with the American dynamism thesis. Hadrian is a founding member of the New American Industrial Alliance, a lobbying organization with Anduril, Palantir, and others, whose stated goal is to simplify arms regulations. J.D. Vance, the current vice president, was formerly a partner in a Thiel fund. These connections are not secret. They are the openly communicated prerequisite of this new industrial ecosystem. Strategically, there are currently two mutually reinforcing movements underway in the US. The first is Anduril, a new generation of weapons manufacturers who are transferring software-defined manufacturing from Silicon Valley to the defense industry. And in April 2024, with the CCA victory, 3 services excluded 2 of the 4 traditional giants. CCA stands for Collaborative Combat Aircraft, meaning unmanned, AI-controlled escort aircraft that fly together with manned jets like the F-35. They are supposed to cost a fraction of their price, production costs, and be producible in large quantities. In April 2024, the US Air Force selected Anduril and General Atomics for the first construction phase. And with that, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman were eliminated. 3 corporations that have been building fighter jets for over 80 years. The second is Hadrian, which doesn't sell end products, but provides the factories where they are made. Hadrian is to Anduril what TSMC is to NVIDIA. Both have had a supply partnership since June 2023. Both are funded by the same investors. This is a deliberately coordinated setup, not a random market phenomenon. What does that mean for Europe? An uncomfortable truth. We have good machine tool manufacturers like Trumpf, Hermel, and DMG Mori. But no integrated software platform like Opus that automates the entire chain from design to manufacturing to inspection. The war in Ukraine has shown that Europe cannot reproduce quickly enough in a war of attrition. Hadrian solves exactly that, but for the US, not for us. And that's not a coincidence. Hadrian is not a neutral technology, but a political project of a faction of the US industrial elite that wants to restore America's industrial sovereignty against China. Europe, as so often in this calculation, is not a partner, but at best a customer to whom finished solutions are sold, with the critical software in an American data center. One thing is clear. How the US produces its critical components changed on the 8th. December 2025 changed as fundamentally as it did on the day of the CCA decision in April 2024. The largest defense company in the Western world has recognized that its 80-year-old model of vertical in-house production and traditional suppliers is no longer sufficient. And a startup has been invited to do in their own facility what they themselves can no longer do. Whether Hadrian will deliver on that, no one knows. Maybe the Pentagon's procurement apparatus will slow them down, just like it once slowed down SpaceX. Maybe scaling from 1 factory to 8 will reveal problems that aren't mentioned in the pitch deck. But even if Hadrian fails, the lesson remains. The production is the product. Whoever controls the factory controls the value creation. And if, as an industry leader, you invite a disruptor into your own hall because you can't solve the scaling problem yourself, you're not signing a contract, but a declaration of intent for transition. Just like with Eindrill and with the detonation engines, what the industry hasn't touched for 80 years has now become a design principle, this time in the precision machine shop. Whoever ignores this will be the Lenovo of the defense industry in 10 years. And now one last tip. If you want to eat healthy on stressful days without cooking yourself, check out Prep My Meal. With the code MARS, you get 5 extra on your entire order, including subscriptions. Link in the description. My name is Serwan, and this was Mars Chronicles. Thanks for tuning in. Per aspera ad astra. Okay, can I have that already? Hadrian, take 1. Operating the workshop. So now you get stuck. Everything gets stuck. Thank you. So, yes, that sentence again. That was a tough one.